Hello friends. So the main thing that I really want to accomplish during this quarantine period is language study, and in particular Chinese and Korean. Now I have not yet even started studying Korean, but if you guys are interested, maybe I'll make a video of me trying to learn the alphabet and make some more videos of me self-studying for that. But I am rather far in my Chinese study. This is the textbook that I was using before I left China. I have not touched this textbook since I came home at the end of January. So I've forgotten a lot. I do get some questions about how I learned Chinese, if I have any study tips, why I decided to study Chinese, so I guess we can answer those questions. I'll give you a brief little timeline of my Chinese study, then maybe I'll do a little bit of studying. This is a fold-out table that I like putting in front of this window to study because I don't have a desk in my room. I don't really have room for it, and also right now it is so stunning outside of my window. I have 2 flowering trees right in front that I just really like looking at. The main reason that I wanted to study Chinese and learn Chinese is because my mom is from Taiwan. And so her first language, her native language, is technically Mandarin, but growing up she never taught me or my siblings Mandarin. If you guys want, I can maybe make a video about my experience growing up mixed and delve a little deeper into why she never taught me Mandarin and why I never learned it. Once I entered university, I decided to take Mandarin as my language requirement. The first year that I did it, I took 2 semesters. It was my sophomore year, and I did pretty well in the first semester and less so in the second semester. Just the course load, and I wasn't studying as much as I should have been. So my junior year, I couldn't fit intermediate Chinese into my fall semester. What I ended up doing was going to China for a month on a study abroad trip. So that was a faculty-led trip, and my plan was to take intermediate Chinese while I was there. Unfortunately, I found out when I got to China that the university hadn't really planned for anybody to take intermediate Chinese, so I ended up taking elementary Chinese all over again. Obviously, I didn't really progress in my Chinese language acquisition during that period of time. And then after that study abroad, I did not study Chinese for over a year. I went and studied abroad in Hong Kong, and that was my senior year of university. So while I was in Hong Kong, I took elementary 2 Chinese for a second time. Turned out for my major that I had to take a language up to the intermediate level. So I had to kind of formulate a plan of getting to intermediate 2 Chinese in time for my graduation. Long story short, what I ended up doing was after taking that course in Hong Kong, once the semester was over, I went and did an intensive 6-week study at a language school in China, because I figured obviously the best place to learn Chinese is in China. I'll have no shortage of language partners, especially because the school that I chose was connected to an English school, so they had like a language exchange program. It was really great. I would definitely, if you are looking for a Chinese language school in China and you have some expendable income, definitely go with Omeda Language School. They're in Yangshuo. It's like the prettiest place in the world. It is so beautiful. It's near Guilin. I mean, who doesn't want to learn Chinese and live in like the most beautiful place in the world? It's, I want to go back. I really do. So yeah, while I was in Yangshuo, it was 6 weeks. And since it was the intensive course, I was taking 3 hours of Chinese in the morning and 3 hours of Chinese in the afternoon. I was doing it Monday through Friday. So it was 6 hours, 5 days a week. And also while I was there, I was taking an online course too. It was a lot of work, but I loved it because I was living and breathing Chinese there, and I progressed in my Chinese. I learned more in those 6 weeks than I had learned in the past 2 or 3 years of learning Chinese, and it was incredible. My listening in particular improved so much because I was in classes either one-on-one or I was with like 2 or 3 other people, if that. So at the beginning of every class, the teachers would kind of make conversation with you. They would talk to you, and you just got a lot of speaking and listening practice. So I was able to get my professor to let me into intermediate 2, and I did really well in that class. I passed and I graduated on time and it was fine. And then after I graduated, I moved to China and taught English for a few months. When I was in China, I was doing one-on-one lessons at a language school near my apartment. That is how I have gotten to where I am now in my Chinese. And my goal was to get to take the HSK4 or even the HSK5 before this year was over while I was in China, but obviously those plans have been derailed. I have been notified by my agency that obviously I can't return to China. They closed the border and they're going to be sending my belongings from my apartment back to me, and I'm just going to be teaching online from now on, which I'm really grateful for. Like I'm really grateful that they even gave us the option of teaching online, because most of the foreign teachers that I know have lost their jobs and are no longer being paid. I still do want to like keep up with my Chinese study, but it's just, I'm so bad with self-studying because I just know I don't have enough self-discipline for that kind of thing. I do, as of right now, have plans to go back abroad. It was cut short, so I'd like to do at least another year abroad, but I don't think I will be going back to China. And if you guys want, I can make a video about my experience teaching in China and the reasons why it's not something that I would like to do again. I really enjoyed living in China, but did not so much enjoy teaching in China. I loved the kids, and you know, my agency was fine and everything, but there were just some things that I really could not deal with a second time around. So I am looking elsewhere for job opportunities, and once things are set in stone, I'll give you guys more information. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. That's how I got to where I am in my Chinese. Something that has definitely helped me not feel too discouraged is just to remember that language acquisition and learning any new subject is not always a linear process. When you think about it, you might get discouraged that, oh, like, you know, it's been 3 years, I should be at this point in my language acquisition. And especially if you compare yourself to other people, especially people who seem to have a natural talent for language, it's easy to feel really bad about yourself. I'm really proud of the fact that I have even gotten to this point in my Chinese. I do have, I guess, a couple tips in terms of improving Chinese, but they're pretty generic, just warning you. I mean, obviously the best way to learn and practice Chinese is to find somebody to talk to. So I can practice a little bit with my mom. The only trouble is that, like I mentioned, did I mention this? I don't know. She moved to the US when she was quite young, and also she's from Taiwan. So a lot of her vocabulary does not match up with the vocabulary that I learned as an adult in China, mainland China. So honestly, sometimes it can be kind of frustrating trying to talk to her. A lot of the time she doesn't understand me unless I speak perfect Chinese, like perfect tones and grammar and everything. That can be a little frustrating, but yeah, if you can find somebody who can speak Chinese and is willing to practice with you, practice with them. One tool that I think is really helpful sometimes can be language exchange apps. The one that I have downloaded is Tandem. I don't know if this is the case with other languages, but I've found, especially with Chinese, that you will get tons and tons of messages if you put that you're a native English speaker or that you know English very well if you're fluent in English, because there are so many Chinese people on the app that really want to improve their English. Another thing is obviously consuming Chinese media. I'm very bad with this particular point because I don't really like watching Chinese dramas, especially if they're from mainland China, because I cannot get over the dubbing that they do over the actors. Like, it just feels so unnatural to me, so I have trouble really getting into Chinese dramas. Or if you are here for my NCT channel, which I think most of you are, watch a bunch of wavy videos, a bunch of wavy interviews. I will say that listening to Chinese music doesn't really help me. Honestly, when I listen to Chinese music, I can't understand a single word that they're saying. They're always singing way too quickly. My mom doesn't even understand Chinese music, so I don't think that that really helps as much as it would help with like other languages, unfortunately. Another thing I would suggest if you don't have anyone to speak with is to record yourself speaking every once in a while, because when you talk, you can't really properly hear what you sound like. You might think that you're pronouncing something correctly, but you're totally off. I have found through recording myself or like watching videos of myself that a lot of the time I think that I'm saying something one way, but I'm really saying it another way. So, and this last tip is a bit of a niche tip, but if you like to video edit, or if you are interested in maybe putting in captions to different videos, a really great way of practicing is through translation. So for example, the videos that I do that are about wavy, I always try to translate the videos myself because it gives me really great practice. And if I make a mistake, somebody in the comments is usually nice enough to kind of just point out whatever mistake I've made. So yeah, those are all of my tips and tricks for studying Chinese. I think I'm just gonna get started with reviewing Chinese, and you guys can kind of study along with me if you so please. Ooh, something that I forgot to mention is that I find it pretty useful to use a gridded notebook rather than a lined notebook when studying Chinese. It's easier to kind of separate the characters that way. And if you've ever seen a Chinese character sheet, you'll kind of understand what I'm saying. So I prefer a nice little gridded notebook as opposed to a lined notebook. I also really like using thin tipped pens because I find it much easier to write characters that way. Really the only way that I personally know of to memorize characters and how to read and write them is to just write them over and over and over until your hand hurts, basically. Unfortunately, there's really no shortcut, honestly. Another thing I forgot to mention, and if you have studied Chinese, chances are you already have this app downloaded, but the best Chinese dictionary that I personally have found is Pleco. It's this little blue app right here, and it is a Chinese dictionary. So, and it gives you the character. You can even set it so that it gives you the Cantonese as well. If you don't know the meaning of a character, you can draw it here and it will give you the meaning of whatever character you draw. So for example, there was a character in my textbook that I didn't recognize. So here, I just drew it there, and you click at the bottom, whichever character it actually is, search, and now I know it's Wen. Xinwen. Ah, it's news. So yes, Pleco is an excellent resource for when you're learning Chinese. We 们有很多共同的爱好，经常一起打球。 唱歌，做菜。Weird reasons to marry a person. We have lots in common. We both play sports, we sing, and we cook. Reading Chinese is so hard. I really truly believe that if I could read all of the Chinese characters, like if I could understand what I was freaking reading, I would be miles ahead of where I am right now in my Chinese. Because as I mentioned, right now, my listening and my speaking are my two strongest points. If you think about it, like in any other language that you would be learning, usually a person is much better at reading than they are at listening, and much better at writing than they are at speaking. But with Chinese, it has to be the opposite, because reading and writing is just so freaking difficult. Like, it's so hard. I'm sorry, I did not mean for that to be a rant, but it literally took me 20 minutes to read these 3 small paragraphs, and it's very frustrating. But I will say the one thing that Chinese really does have going for it is the grammar, because the grammar can be very easy, especially when you're first learning it. Obviously, now that I'm at this level, I find the grammar to be quite difficult, but when you're first learning, Chinese is super easy because there's no conjugation for verbs. I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but there's no like levels to it like there is with Korean and Japanese, where you have to change the way that you speak depending on who you're talking to. Like, there's no levels of seniority or anything like that, or respect or anything. Like Chinese, it's just like you talk the same to everyone. All right, you know, it really hasn't been that long since I started studying, but I am so freaking tired. Thanks for watching. I hope this was at least somewhat helpful. I don't know if I gave any really helpful tips because, like I said, I am not good at self-studying, as you could probably tell from this video and how quickly I have given up. I can't do anymore. My brain's gonna explode. Thanks for joining me for today's video. I hope you guys are all doing well, staying safe, and maybe doing a little studying while you can. I'll see you later. Bye.